Let's take a look at the basic technique for hooping a flat or tubular type item. When it comes to your square hoop, like your jacket back or your 12 by 12, just so you realize, the only place you have true holding power is in the corners. So all in here, the garment's not being held extremely well. So when it comes to setting the tension, this is your adjustment knob right here, you just want to make sure that you don't tighten it so much that you strip the screw. Other than that, that's how you would actually adjust the tension on this, because you have to hoop it tight enough to be able to hold the garment. And when you're using this, you're usually sewing things like jackets and blankets and things of that nature, so they're going to be heavier items as well. You do want to make sure that when you put the hoop in, you of course, this part here with the little hooks here, the little U, that is always going into the machine. This is the back section here. You want to keep that in mind so that you put the hoop on in the right orientation. Now, when it comes to the round hoops that you would use for things like your left chest, center chest perhaps, and things of that nature, your smaller designs, we're going to preset the size of the hoop using the adjustment ring. And the way I like to do that, and again on this we want to make sure that the U is facing towards the machine. The way I like to set the tension is I like to put the bottom hoop into the machine without any backing. And when I put this in here, I want this just to be snug, and that was loose. So that's too loose. Now, it doesn't really matter which way this ring faces. However, if you put it so that the adjustment is to the bottom, you can just reach inside the shirt and make a little adjustment, and then try it again.
See ya.
Okay, now that was just a little bit of tension as it went down, which is what I want. Now, to check to see if this is tight enough, what I do is I make sure I've pushed this flat to my table, and if we look at this, we can see that the hoop and the garment are perfectly flush. Then I take the weight of the garment, and that's what determines how tight I need to make this. And I gently, with the weight hanging down, I gently shake this 4 or 5 times and then check it. Now, when I check it, I just want to make sure that this remained flush, which in this case it did. If you see that an edge pulled up like this, the reason it's doing that is because this is just a little bit too loose. And we would just make this a little bit tighter. Okay, now that we've adjusted the hoop for the thickness of this material, let's actually take a look at hooping it. So we set this down on our workspace. And we want to measure where we're going to place this design. Now, generally, there are a couple different concepts. If you had a placket where you've got a buttoned up placket in the center, you either go to the bottom of it or to the bottom buttonhole, depending on how long it is. Okay, and then you put the design across from it. As far as coming off the sleeve, another technique is to either come, depending on whether we're working with smaller shirts or larger shirts, you can either use the bottom of the armpit or the middle of the sleeve, depending on the design. As a general rule, we want to start approximately 3 inches down from the collar and then our design's going to go right in this general area here. As far as left to right, a good rule of thumb is to go where the collar and the shoulder seam meet and come down that. So in this case, I know that I want the center of my design approximately right here. So I take my hoop, I take my piece of backing that I'm going to use. Make sure you pick the backing that's appropriate for the stretch of the material that you're sewing. We set this inside. Wherever we put our mark for our center point, we want to make sure the center of the hoop is in that general area. And then, when we line up the top part of the hoop, we need to make sure that we're squared up to the shoulders. Now, when you hoop the item, we want the sewing field to be taut, smooth, but not stretched. So I'm going to set this in here, and I'm just going to get this smooth. I am not stretching the material, and then I set my hoop together. Once we're done, it's always a good idea to put an extra 1/8 inch recess in the hoop all the way around. You're not going to push it all the way down, just an 1/8 inch. So there's my 1/8 inch reveal. And if we look at this, that's nice and smooth, but not stretched. And that's the proper way to hoop a flat or tubular item.